I'm Jessica Thompson, 28, CEO of NeuralLink Solutions in San Francisco. And that December morning, staring at the Tech Innovator of the Year award sitting cold on my desk, I thought I was finally ready to go home for Christmas. I was wrong. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The award ceremony had been everything I'd dreamed of since launching my AI startup 3 years ago. Standing on that stage at the Moscone Center, accepting recognition for our breakthrough in neural network optimization, I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I scanned the audience of tech leaders and investors searching for faces that weren't there. My parents hadn't come. They never did. Jessica? Emma Rodriguez knocked on my door, her voice cutting through my thoughts. At 19, she was everything I wasn't at her age. Confident, charming, with an easy smile that could disarm anyone. I'd hired her straight out of community college 6 months ago, impressed by her drive, and grateful for someone who actually seemed to see me as more than just a boss. "The quarterly reports are ready for your review," she said, setting a tablet on my desk. "And I confirmed your flight to Connecticut for tomorrow. First class, just like you requested." I nodded, still staring out at the San Francisco skyline. 43 floors below, the city bustled with holiday shoppers and tourists, everyone heading somewhere they belonged. "Emma, do you ever wonder if success means anything if you have no one to share it with?" She perched on the edge of my desk, something she had started doing lately. "You have people who care about you, Jessica. Your team here adores you. Your investors respect you. And," she paused, her brown eyes softening, "you have me. I care about what happens to you." That was Emma, always knowing exactly what to say. I'd been working 16-hour days since the funding round closed, barely seeing daylight, and she had been my anchor. When I forgot to eat, she'd order my favorite Thai food. When I stressed about board meetings, she'd remind me of all our wins. She was the closest thing I had to family in this city. I'm Jessica Thompson, 28, CEO of NeuralLink Solutions in San Francisco. And that December morning, staring at the Tech Innovator of the Year award sitting cold on my desk, I thought I was finally ready to go home for Christmas. I was wrong. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The award ceremony had been everything I'd dreamed of since launching my AI startup 3 years ago. Standing on that stage at the Moscone Center, accepting recognition for our breakthrough in neural network optimization, I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I scanned the audience of tech leaders and investors searching for faces that weren't there. My parents hadn't come. They never did. Jessica? Emma Rodriguez knocked on my door, her voice cutting through my thoughts. At 19, she was everything I wasn't at her age. Confident, charming, with an easy smile that could disarm anyone. I'd hired her straight out of community college 6 months ago, impressed by her drive, and grateful for someone who actually seemed to see me as more than just a boss. "The quarterly reports are ready for your review," she said, setting a tablet on my desk. "And I confirmed your flight to Connecticut for tomorrow. First class, just like you requested." I nodded, still staring out at the San Francisco skyline. 43 floors below, the city bustled with holiday shoppers and tourists, everyone heading somewhere they belonged. "Emma, do you ever wonder if success means anything if you have no one to share it with?" She perched on the edge of my desk, something she had started doing lately. "You have people who care about you, Jessica. Your team here adores you. Your investors respect you. And," she paused, her brown eyes softening, "you have me. I care about what happens to you." That was Emma, always knowing exactly what to say. I'd been working 16-hour days since the funding round closed, barely seeing daylight, and she had been my anchor. When I forgot to eat, she'd order my favorite Thai food. When I stressed about board meetings, she'd remind me of all our wins. She was the closest thing I had to family in this city. "Tell me about your family again," Emma said, pulling up my parents' social media on her phone. She had been doing this a lot lately, asking about the Hartwells, studying their posts like she was preparing for an exam. "Your mom's Christmas parties always look so elegant." I watched her scroll through photos of my adoptive mother Kate's latest soiree. Crystal champagne flutes, designer dresses, the kind of effortless wealth that had always made me feel like an outsider looking in. Kate loves her parties. She was a model before she married my dad, you know. Always knows how to make everything look perfect. And your father's investment firm did really well this year, right? Emma's finger hovered over a photo of Richard at some charity gala, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile practiced. I guess so. He retired a few years ago, but yeah, the family's always been comfortable. I didn't mention that comfortable was an understatement, or that their lifestyle had become more lavish recently. Some things felt too personal to share, even with Emma. "You should take me with you," she said suddenly, her eyes bright with excitement. "I could meet them, see where you grew up. I've never been to Connecticut, and I bet they'd love to hear how amazing you are from someone who works with you every day." The suggestion caught me off guard. In 3 years of dating my boyfriend Daniel, I'd never brought him home for Christmas. The Hartwells had a way of making my achievements seem small, my choices questionable. But Emma was different. She saw my worth in a way my family never had. "You really want to spend Christmas with a bunch of strangers instead of—" I realized I didn't know what Emma usually did for the holidays. She had mentioned growing up in foster care but never talked about her life outside work. "Instead of what? Sitting alone in my studio apartment eating ramen?" She laughed, but I caught something hollow in it. "Besides, they're not strangers. I feel like I know them from all your stories. Your brother Mike sounds amazing, an environmental lawyer fighting the good fight. And I'd love to see the house where you grew up." I studied her face, seeing genuine excitement mixed with something else I couldn't quite identify. Emma had been working herself ragged lately, staying late even when I told her to go home, taking on responsibilities beyond her job description. Maybe she needed this break as much as I needed the support. "Okay," I said, surprising myself. "But I should warn you, the Hartwells can be challenging. They've never quite known what to make of me." Emma's smile widened, and she pulled out her phone to start researching flights. "Don't worry, Jessica. I'm great with parents. Trust me, they're going to love having me there." Something in her tone made me look at her more carefully, but she was already absorbed in travel websites, her fingers flying across the screen. I turned back to my award, its metallic surface reflecting the city lights beginning to twinkle in the December dusk. For years, I'd told myself I didn't need my family's approval. I'd built something incredible here, a company worth $50 million, a team of brilliant engineers, recognition from the industry's top minds. But sitting in my corner office, watching Emma research my childhood home with an intensity that seemed oddly personal, I realized that success felt hollow when you had no one to share it with. "The jet's ready whenever you are," Emma announced, looking up from her phone. "I found the perfect outfit for meeting your parents. Professional, but warm. You know, I want to make a good impression." "I'm sure you will," I said, and meant it. Emma had a gift for reading people, for knowing exactly what they wanted to hear. If anyone could charm the Hartwells, it would be her. As I packed my laptop and headed for the elevator, Emma chattering excitedly about Connecticut's winter scenery, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Maybe this Christmas would be different. Maybe bringing Emma would show my parents that I wasn't the isolated, difficult daughter they remembered. Maybe I'd finally have someone in my corner when I walked through those doors. The elevator descended toward the parking garage, and Emma squeezed my arm. "This is going to be perfect, Jessica. I can already tell." Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the certainty in her voice. I should have wondered why she knew so much about my family's social media, why she'd been so interested in every detail about my childhood, why she seemed more excited about this trip than I was. But I was too busy hoping that for once I wouldn't have to face the Hartwells alone. As our car pulled into the night traffic heading toward the airport, Emma's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and smiled, typing back quickly before sliding the phone into her purse. "Who was that?" I asked, absently, watching the city lights blur past. "Oh, just confirming something for tomorrow," she said, her voice light. "Nothing important." But I caught her reflection in the window, that same intense look she'd had while studying my family's photos, like she was planning something I couldn't see. I pushed the thought away, telling myself I was being paranoid. Emma was the one person in my life who had never let me down. That was my first mistake. The Hartwell estate looked exactly the same as I remembered. And that was the problem. The circular driveway still curved around the marble fountain my mother had installed to impress the neighbors. The front door still bore the brass nameplate that read, "The Hartwells," in elegant script, as if anyone might forget whose Tudor mansion this was. Even the winter landscaping was perfect. Not a dead branch in sight, every evergreen precisely shaped. But something felt different the moment I stepped out of the Uber. Emma bounded up the front steps like she owned the place, while I hung back, adjusting my coat and trying to shake off the familiar knot of anxiety that always hit me here. "Jessica!" Kate appeared in the doorway, her blonde hair swept into a chignon that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. At 54, she still moved like the runway model she'd been in her 20s, all calculated grace and practiced smiles. "And you must be Emma. I've heard so much about you." I froze. "You have?" But Kate was already embracing Emma like they were old friends. And Emma was hugging her back with the kind of warmth she'd never shown me, even after months of working together. "Mrs. Hartwell, thank you so much for including me," Emma said, her voice pitched perfectly between respectful and familiar. "Your home is even more beautiful than I imagined. Please, call me Kate," my mother said, linking arms with Emma and leading her inside. "Richard is so excited to meet you. He's been asking about you all week." All week? I followed them into the foyer, my confusion growing. The house smelled like Kate's signature Jo Malone candles and something else. Fresh flowers, expensive wine, the scent of money being spent. The living room was decorated for Christmas with the kind of effortless elegance that came from hiring the best designer in Greenwich County. "Emma, darling, let me show you to your room," Kate said, completely ignoring me. "I've put you in the blue guest suite. I think you'll love the view of the gardens." "The blue suite?" I interrupted. "That's the nicest guest room in the house." Kate's smile didn't waver. "Well, Emma is our special guest, isn't she? You can stay in your old room, Jessica. Nothing's changed there." Of course nothing had changed. My childhood bedroom was probably exactly as I left it at 18. Stark white walls, practical furniture, shelves lined with academic awards that had never impressed anyone. Meanwhile, Emma was getting the room Kate usually reserved for her most important visitors. I watched Emma glide up the stairs like she'd climbed them 1,000 times before, her hand trailing along the banister with casual familiarity. "Emma seems to know her way around," I said carefully. "Oh, she's been here before," Kate said, as if that were the most natural thing in the world. "Didn't she tell you? We had lunch last month when she was in town. Such a delightful girl. So much more approachable than most young people these days." The word hit like a slap. Approachable. Unlike me. The implication hung in the air between us. "When was Emma in Connecticut?" I asked. But Kate was already walking away, calling over her shoulder about dinner preparations. I stood alone in the foyer, staring at the family photos arranged on the antique console table. There was Richard at some golf tournament, Kate at a charity luncheon, Mike at his law school graduation. I had to look hard to find any pictures of myself, and when I did, they were from years ago. High school graduation, college acceptance letter, the day I'd launched my company. Ancient history, apparently. "Jess," Mike's voice echoed from the kitchen, and I felt some of my tension ease. At 26, my adoptive brother still had the same infectious grin that had charmed everyone since childhood. But there was something strained around his eyes now. He hugged me tightly, and I caught him glancing nervously toward the stairs. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, it's been weird around here lately." He lowered his voice. "There's stuff we need to talk about, but not here." Before I could ask what he meant, Richard appeared in the doorway. My adoptive father had aged well. The silver hair and expensive suit gave him the kind of distinguished look that opened doors in his former investment banking world. But his smile felt forced as he shook my hand with the same business-like grip he'd use with a client. "Jessica, successful as always, I hear. Congratulations on the recent funding round." He spoke like he was reading from a script. "Where's your assistant? Kate mentioned she was joining us." "Emma's upstairs, and she's not just my assistant, Dad. She's been instrumental in our company's growth." "I'm sure she has." Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully, but his expression was unreadable. We'll have to hear all about it at dinner. Dinner was a surreal experience. Emma appeared in a cashmere sweater I'd never seen before, looking every inch the polished young professional. She charmed Richard with questions about investment strategies and complimented Kate on the table settings with the expertise of someone who'd studied etiquette. She laughed at all the right moments, offered thoughtful opinions on current events, and somehow managed to steer every conversation back to how wonderful the Hartwell family was. I sat at the same seat that I'd occupied since childhood, watching my own assistant work the room like a seasoned politician. When had she learned to discuss wine pairings? When had she developed opinions on Connecticut real estate? And why did my parents seem so much more interested in her stories than anything I had to say about my company's success? Emma was telling us about your new neural network optimization, Richard said, cutting into his filet mignon. Fascinating stuff. She has such a clear way of explaining complex concepts. I stared at Emma. You discussed our proprietary technology? Just the basics, Emma said, smoothly. Richard was curious about AI applications in financial services. I thought you'd want me to represent the company well. Of course she did, Kate added. Emma understands that business success is about relationships, not just technology, something you've always struggled with, Jessica. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. Here I was, having just closed a $50 million funding round, and my mother was criticizing my business acumen in front of my employee? Actually, Emma said, her voice gentle but firm, Jessica is incredibly gifted at building relationships. The loyalty she inspires in her team is remarkable. I've never worked for anyone who cares more about the people around her. For a moment, I felt a surge of gratitude. At least someone was defending me. But then I caught the look that passed between Emma and my parents, something subtle, but unmistakably coordinated, like actors hitting their marks in a well-rehearsed play. Speaking of Jessica's team, Richard said, Emma was telling us she might be interested in exploring other opportunities, expanding her horizons, so to speak. My fork clattered against my plate. What? Emma's cheeks flushed pink. I mentioned that I'm always open to learning new things. Richard knows so many interesting people in different industries. Different industries? Emma, you work for me. We have plans, projects in development. Oh, Jessica, Kate interrupted with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. You can't expect to keep Emma trapped in that little startup forever. A bright girl like her deserves bigger opportunities. Little startup? I'd heard Kate dismiss my achievements before, but never bat blatantly in front of an employee. I looked around the table, at Richard nodding approvingly, at Kate beaming at Emma like she was discussing her own daughter's future, at Mike staring down to his plate with obvious discomfort. And then Richard reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded set of papers. Actually, Jessica, there's something we need to tell you. Show you, rather. He unfolded the documents with the careful precision of someone who'd spent decades handling important paperwork. Emma is officially part of our family now. The words didn't make sense at first. I stared at the legal documents, trying to process what I was seeing. Adoption papers. Emma Rodriguez, now Emma Hartwell. Signed, sealed, and dated 3 months ago. You adopted her? The words came out as a whisper.
It seemed like the natural thing to do, Kate said, reaching over to squeeze Emma's hand. The poor dear has been on her own for so long, and she fits in so perfectly with our family. Emma had the grace to look embarrassed, but not surprised. Not even a little bit. She'd known this was coming. She'd known before we ever got on that plane. You've been planning this, I said, looking directly at Emma. All those questions about my family, all that interest in Connecticut, you've been planning this for months. Jessica, please don't make this about you, Richard said, his voice taking on the dismissive tone I remembered from childhood. This is about giving Emma the opportunity she deserves, the stability, the connections. The connections? I repeated the words slowly, understanding finally dawning. You adopted my assistant to use her as a networking tool. That's unfair, Kate said. But her protest sounded hollow. "We genuinely care about Emma. She's everything we could want in a daughter." Everything they could want in a daughter. Unlike me, apparently. I stood up, my legs shaky but my voice steady. "I need some air." "Jessica, wait!" Emma started to say, but I was already walking away. I made it to my childhood bedroom before the full weight of the betrayal hit me. My parents had adopted my own employee without telling me. They had been secretly building a relationship with her for months, possibly since the day I'd hired her. And Emma? Emma had played along, gathering information, positioning herself, working her way into their good graces while pretending to be my friend. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Dr. Sarah Kim's number. It was late, but Sarah had always told me to call if I needed her. "Jessica." Her voice was alert despite the hour. "What's wrong?" "I think," I said, staring at the academic awards on my shelf that had never been enough to earn my parents' love. "I think I've been played by everyone I trusted, and I don't know who I can believe anymore." Through the thin walls, I could hear laughter from downstairs. Emma's bright giggle mixing with Kate's practiced social laugh and Richard's approving chuckle. The sound of a perfect family dinner. One that didn't need me in it. "Tell me what you're feeling right now, Jessica. Not what you think you should feel, but what's actually happening in your body." Dr. Sarah Kim's voice came through my laptop screen with the same steady calm that had guided me through panic attacks, failed relationships, and the persistent feeling that I was fundamentally broken. I'd video called her from my childhood bedroom at 11 p.m., sitting on the same twin bed where I'd cried myself to sleep countless times after family dinners that left me feeling invisible. "I feel like I'm suffocating," I said, pressing my palm against my chest. Like everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. My own assistant, Sarah. They adopted my own assistant. And that feels like a betrayal. Of course it feels like a betrayal. Emma's been working for me for 6 months, learning about my business, my vulnerabilities, my family history, and the whole time she was playing some kind of long game to replace me. "Replace you?" Sarah leaned forward slightly, her dark eyes sharp with professional interest. "That's an interesting choice of words." I gestured helplessly at the room around me. "Look at this place. Look at these awards, these participation trophies they never cared about. 23 years I've been trying to earn their approval, and it takes Emma 6 months to become their perfect daughter." "Jessica, I want you to listen to what you just said. 23 years of trying to earn their approval." Sarah's voice was gentle, but unflinching. "What does that tell you about this relationship?" The question hit me like cold water. I stared at my reflection in the laptop screen. 38 years old, CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, and still seeking validation from people who'd never given it freely. "It tells me I'm pathetic," I said. "No! It tells you you've been trying to buy something that can't be purchased." Sarah's words hung in the air between us. Through the bedroom walls, I could hear the distant sound of conversation from downstairs, Emma's laugh, Kate's delighted responses, the easy flow of a family dinner I'd never been part of. Not really. "Tell me about the money, Jessica." "What money?" "The money you've been sending them. The anonymous support you set up through Marcus's firm." I went cold. "How do you know about that?" "Because you told me about it 2 years ago when you were agonizing over whether to increase the monthly amount. You said you wanted to help your family maintain their lifestyle without making them feel beholden to you." The memory came flooding back. Sitting in Sarah's office, justifying the elaborate financial arrangements I'd made to funnel money to the Hartwells without them knowing it came from me. I'd convinced myself it was love, that I was being generous without expecting anything in return. Oh, God, I whispered. How much have I given them? You tell me.
I pulled up my phone, accessing the financial app that tracked my various investments in charitable giving. The numbers were all there, hiding in plain sight. Monthly payments to cover their mortgage, annual contributions to their country club membership, vacation funds transferred through a complex web of trusts, Kate's shopping sprees, Richard's golf memberships, the house renovations they'd done last year. 200,000, I said, my voice barely audible. Over the past 5 years, I've given them over $200,000 anonymously. And what did you hope to get in return? Nothing. I wasn't trying to buy anything. I was just Jessica. Sarah's voice cut through my protest with surgical precision. You were absolutely trying to buy something. The question is what? I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of my own self-deception. I wanted them to be happy. I wanted them to have nice things, to not worry about money, to what? To have space in their lives for me. I finished, the truth scraping my throat raw. I thought if they weren't stressed about bills, if they had everything they wanted, maybe they'd finally see me as more than just a disappointment. And how's that working out for you? The bitter laugh that escaped me sounded foreign. They adopted my employee, using money I gave them to fund their lifestyle, so I'd say it's working out great. Tell me about Emma's monthly allowance. Her what? The $5,000 a month that's been going to an E. Rodriguez account started about 7 months ago. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the financial records. There it was. Buried in the charitable giving section, monthly payments to someone with Emma's initials started a month before I'd hired her. I didn't set this up, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew how naive they sounded. Marcus handles all the trust distributions. I told him to take care of anything my family needed. So, Emma qualified as family need? The implications crashed over me like a wave. Emma hadn't just been hired as my assistant. She'd been receiving money from my own trust fund, money I had unknowingly approved for family support, which meant she's been on my payroll from the beginning, before I ever met her, before the job interview, before any of it. My parents set this up. What does that tell you about your relationship with them? It tells me they've been using me. The words felt like admitting something I'd known but refused to see for years. They found a way to get more money out of me while giving me exactly what I'd always wanted, someone who'd pretend to care about me. Go deeper. I stared at the academic awards on my shelf, the perfect grades and achievements that had never been enough. It tells me that love in this family is transactional. It tells me that they can't imagine anyone caring about me unless they're being paid for it. And what does that tell you about how they see you? The answer was there, stark and unavoidable. It tells me they see me as so fundamentally unlovable that the only way I could have genuine human connection is if I buy it. Sarah nodded slowly. And how long have you been buying it, Jessica? The question opened something in me that I'd kept carefully locked away. Every business contact I overpaid for services, every relationship where I'd been the one picking up the tab, planning the trips, making the effort, every friendship that had required my constant investment to maintain. All my life, I whispered. Every relationship I've ever had, I've been the one giving more, paying more, trying harder, because somewhere deep down, I believed that's the only way anyone would stay. Including with Emma? Including with Emma. I thought about all the bonuses I'd given her, the expensive lunches, the casual way I'd covered her coffee and transportation costs. I was buying her loyalty from day one, and she was selling it back to my parents for a higher price. What are you going to do about it? I stared at my reflection in the laptop screen, seeing myself clearly for the first time in years. The successful entrepreneur, the tech innovator, the woman who had built something remarkable, all of it undermined by a desperate need to purchase love from people who were incapable of giving it freely. I'm going to stop buying, I said, all of it.
The money, the gifts, the endless effort to earn something that should be freely given. I'm done. That sounds like a significant change. Are you prepared for what happens when you stop funding their lifestyle? I thought about the Christmas party tomorrow night, about Emma charming guests with my business insights while wearing clothes bought with my money, about Richard's investment advice funded by my anonymous contributions, about Kate's social status built on my financial support. Let me ask you something, Sarah. What happens to a house of cards when you remove the foundation? Her smile was small but fierce. It collapses. Then I guess we're about to find out what my family looks like when they can't afford to keep up appearances. I closed the laptop and sat in the silence of my childhood room, surrounded by evidence of a girl who tried so hard to be worthy of love that she forgot to ask whether the people withholding it were worthy of her. Tomorrow night, at Kate's precious Christmas party, I was going to find out exactly how much of my family's affection had been purchased, and then I was going to stop payment on all of it.
The thought should have terrified me. Instead, for the first time in years, I felt free. The Hartwell Christmas party was everything Kate lived for. 200 of Connecticut's most influential people crammed into our living room, drinking champagne that cost more per bottle than most people made in a week. I stood in the corner nursing a glass of wine, watching Emma work the room like she'd been born to it. She was wearing a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before, something that probably cost more than her monthly salary. Her hair was professionally styled, her makeup flawless, and she moved through the crowd with the confidence of someone who belonged, which apparently she did now. Emma's quite remarkable, isn't she? A woman in pearls appeared beside me. I recognized her as Mrs. Pemberton, one of Kate's country club friends. Richard was just telling us about her business insights. So refreshing to meet a young person with such sophisticated ideas. My business insights? I watched Emma gesturing animatedly to a group of Richard's former colleagues, explaining what looked suspiciously like the market analysis I'd shared with her last month about AI applications in financial services. She's certainly talented, I said carefully. And so lovely. Kate says she's like the daughter she always dreamed of. Mrs. Pemberton's smile was kind, but the words hit like a physical blow. You must be so proud of your parents for taking her in. Before I could respond, the sound of a knife tapping against crystal cut through the party chatter. Richard stood near the fireplace, his face flushed with wine and satisfaction, commanding the room's attention with the ease of someone accustomed to being heard. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention," he began, his voice carrying the practiced authority of his banking days. "Kate and I wanted to share some wonderful news with all of you tonight." My stomach dropped. I knew what was coming before he said it. As many of you know, we've been blessed with an addition to our family. Emma Hartwell, yes, Hartwell now, has brought such joy into our lives. She's everything we could have hoped for in a daughter. The room erupted in warm applause. I watched faces I'd known since childhood beam at Emma with the kind of approval I'd spent decades trying to earn. She accepted their congratulations gracefully, humble but glowing, playing the role of grateful adoptee perfectly. But that's not all, Richard continued, and the room quieted again. Kate and I have decided that Emma will be inheriting our primary estate and investment portfolio. She represents the future of the Hartwell family legacy. The words hit the room like a bomb, but the explosion was all champagne toasts and excited murmurs. I stood frozen as people rushed to congratulate Emma on her good fortune, as if becoming an heir was some kind of personal achievement rather than winning a lottery she'd rigged. Emma caught my eye across the room and had the grace to look embarrassed, but she didn't refuse the congratulations. She didn't correct anyone who called her lucky. She just smiled and accepted it all like she deserved it. "Jessica, darling," Kate appeared at my elbow, her voice honeyed with false concern. "You look pale. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm fine," I managed. "Good. I was hoping you could help in the kitchen. Emma's been such a wonderful hostess tonight. I'd hate to pull her away from the guests." "Of course.
The biological daughter relegated to kitchen duty while the adopted assistant played princess. I walked through the swinging doors into the kitchen, needing a moment away from the performance. But I could still hear them through the walls. Emma's laugh, Richard's booming voice telling stories about his remarkable new daughter, Kate's friends cooing over how lucky they were to find such a gem. 23 years of trying to earn a place at their table, and Emma had walked in and claimed the head seat in 6 months. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Marcus Webb's number. If I was going to tear down this house of cards, I needed to understand exactly how much foundation I was removing. The phone rang twice before Marcus answered. Jessica, everything all right? Marcus, I need you to pull all the records on the Hartwell Family Trust accounts. Every payment, every distribution, everything. Jessica, it's nearly midnight on Christmas Eve. I know what time it is. How much, Marcus? How much have they gotten? There was a pause, then the sound of typing. Total disbursements over 5 years. Jesus, Jessica. $237,000, plus the monthly allowance to Emma Rodriguez that started 7 months ago. And if I stopped it, all of it, they'd be bankrupt within 90 days. Their mortgage alone is $8,000 a month, and they've got country club fees, credit cards. Jessica, they're living entirely on your money. Their lifestyle is completely unsustainable without your support. I stared through the kitchen window at the party guests, at the life my money had bought for people who saw me as nothing more than a wallet with legs. Then I guess it's time for them to learn to live within their means. Jessica, think about this. If you cut them off, they'll have to face reality. Marcus, prepare the paperwork to terminate all payments to the Hartwell family accounts, effective immediately. Are you sure about this?
Through the kitchen door, I could hear Emma's voice rising above the crowd, telling some charming story that had everyone laughing. My story, probably. My life, repackaged and performed by someone who'd studied me like a script. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I gave up trying and called Marcus back from the guest bathroom, running water to muffle my voice. I need to know everything, I whispered into the phone. How deep does this go? Marcus's voice was alert despite the hour. Lawyer instincts, probably. I've been digging since we talked. Jessica, this is worse than you think. Tell me. The monthly payment to Emma Rodriguez started 8 months ago, but the paperwork requests came from your parents. They specifically asked me to set up an educational support fund for a promising young woman who could benefit your family. I thought it was charity. My hand tightened on the phone. They planned this from the beginning? It gets worse. I found emails between Richard and my office requesting background checks on Emma, financial records, psychological profiles. They weren't just vetting her for adoption, they were vetting her to manipulate you. The bathroom walls felt like they were closing in. Psychological profiles? Foster care history, attachment issues, history of forming intense bonds with authority figures. Jessica, they didn't just find Emma. They chose her specifically because she'd be good at making you trust her. I slumped against the bathroom door, feeling sick. Every conversation I'd had with Emma, every moment I thought we were bonding, every time she'd seemed to understand me, it had all been calculated. There's more, Marcus continued. The country club membership, the house renovations, even Kate's shopping sprees, they've been billing everything to your trust accounts for years. But here's the thing. Legally, you have absolute control. Every payment requires your approval, even if it's just rubber stamped. You can shut this down completely. What would happen to them? Financially, complete collapse. They owe 2 months on the mortgage, their credit cards are maxed out, and they've got property taxes due next month. Without your support, they lose everything. I thought about the party still going on downstairs, about Emma charming guests while wearing clothes bought with my money, about Richard announcing her inheritance of assets that only existed because of my generosity. And Emma's allowance? That's the interesting part. It's been going to an account she shares with someone else. A Mrs. Carmen Rodriguez in Hartford? Her mother? Looks like it. And Jessica, there are other payments too. Rent, medical bills, rehab costs. Emma's been supporting her mother's recovery this whole time.
That gave me pause. Despite everything, there was something almost admirable about a 19-year-old supporting her mother's sobriety, but it didn't excuse the betrayal. Marcus, prepare termination papers for all family trust disbursements. I want them legal and binding. Jessica, are you sure this will destroy them financially? They've been destroying me emotionally for years. Maybe it's time for some balance. I hung up and stared at myself in the bathroom mirror. My reflection looked tired, older somehow, but there was something else, a hardness around my eyes that hadn't been there before. I was done being the family ATM, done funding my own humiliation. Downstairs, I could hear the last guests leaving, their voices bright with alcohol and gossip. Soon the house would be quiet, and tomorrow would bring the reckoning. I thought about Emma sleeping peacefully in the blue guest suite, probably dreaming about her new inheritance, unaware that her fairy tale was built on sand. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Can we talk? I know this looks bad, but there's more to the story. Emma." I stared at the message, wondering how she'd gotten my personal number, then deleted it without responding. Whatever story she wanted to tell, whatever justification she had crafted, I wasn't interested in hearing it. I'd been manipulated enough. Instead, I texted Marcus, "Send the termination papers first thing tomorrow." All of it. His response came immediately. Done. "Jessica, for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing." I found Emma in the kitchen at 7 a.m., making coffee like she owned the place. She changed out of her party dress into designer jeans and cashmere sweater. More clothes I'd never seen before, probably bought with my money. "We need to talk," I said. She turned, and for a moment, her mask slipped. I saw something calculating in her eyes before the sweet, concerned expression slid back into place. "Jessica, I was hoping we could cut the act." My voice was sharper than I had intended, but I was past caring about politeness. "I know about the money. All of it." Emma's face went pale, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she sank into one of the kitchen chairs, suddenly looking her age. "How long? How long have you been working with them?" "Since before I applied for the job." Her voice was barely a whisper. "They contacted me through social services, said they had an opportunity for someone with my background." "Your background?" "Foster care. No family ties. They said they needed someone who understood how to make powerful people feel needed." The clinical way she described it made my skin crawl. "So you studied me, like a mark?" Emma nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. "They gave me files about you, your business, your psychological patterns. They said you had trust issues, that you'd respond well to someone who seemed grateful, who made you feel important. And you just went along with it?"
"Do you know what it's like to age out of foster care with nothing?" Emma's voice cracked. "No family, no support, working 3 jobs to pay for community college? They offered me a chance at a real life, a real family. I thought maybe if I played along at first, eventually it could become real." "Real?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think love is something you can fake until it becomes authentic? I thought I could make them care about me the way they cared about you." "They don't care about me, Emma. They never have. That's the whole point." Emma wiped her eyes, smearing her mascara. "I know that now. Last night, listening to them talk about you, they don't see you as a daughter. They see you as a resource. And they wanted me to help them manage that resource better." "Manage me?" "Keep you engaged, keep you giving, keep you hoping. They said if you had someone who seemed to care about you, you'd be more stable, more predictable." The brutality of it took my breath away. Not only had my parents never loved me, they'd hired someone to perform love because they found my emotional needs inconvenient. "What about your mother? The payments to Carmen Rodriguez?" Emma's composure cracked completely. "She's been clean for 8 months, the longest since I was little. I couldn't let her relapse because I lost the income." "So you sold me out to save her." "I sold myself out to save her. There's a difference." I stared at this 19-year-old who'd been willing to destroy someone else's life to protect her mother's sobriety, and despite everything, I felt a flicker of understanding. Desperation made people do terrible things. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "I'm cutting off all financial support to this family. Every payment, every allowance,
everything. Emma's face went white. Jessica, please, your mother isn't my responsibility. You made your choice when you chose to manipulate me instead of just asking for help. But if the money stops, they'll kick me out. I'll have nothing. Then you'll understand what it feels like to be me, someone whose value is purely transactional. Emma stood up, her fear transforming into something harder. You think you're so much better than me? You've been buying their love for years. At least I was honest about being paid for mine. The words hit harder than I expected because they contained a grain of truth. We'd both been performing for the Hartwells' approval, just from different sides of the transaction. The difference is, I said quietly, that I was trying to love them despite their flaws. You were exploiting mine. Emma's shoulders sagged in defeat. What do you want me to do? I want you to pack your things and leave today, before the money stops flowing and they realize what you really are. And if I refuse? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. Then I call the police and report the fraud. Corporate espionage, identity theft. I'm sure my lawyers can come up with a few more charges. Emma stared at the phone, then at me, seeing perhaps for the first time that the woman she'd been paid to manipulate had more steel in her spine than anyone had anticipated. Jessica, for what it's worth, I did come to care about you. These past few months, don't. I held up a hand to stop her. Don't insult my intelligence any more than you already have. Emma nodded and walked toward the stairs, pausing at the doorway. They're going to blame you for everything when the money stops. Let them. At least I'll finally know where I really stand. As I watched her go, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The clean, sharp satisfaction of standing up for myself. It wouldn't bring back the money I'd wasted or the years I'd spent chasing approval from people incapable of giving it. But it was a start. Mike found me at the Starbucks downtown, my hands wrapped around a coffee I hadn't touched. He slid into the opposite booth, his face grim. She's gone, he said without preamble. Emma packed and left an hour ago. Mom's having a complete breakdown. Good, I said, surprised by how cold I sounded. Jess, there's something else. I've been documenting things. The sudden changes in their lifestyle, the expensive renovations, the new cars. They've been living way beyond their dad's retirement income for years. I know. I've been funding it. You? How much? Over $200,000. Anonymous trust payments through Marcus's firm. Jesus! Mike ran his hands through his hair. So when you cut them off, they lose everything. The house, the cars, the country club membership, all of it. Before Mike could respond, an elderly woman approached our table hesitantly. She was small and silver-haired, wearing a worn but elegant coat, and something about her face made my heart skip. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Are you Jessica Thompson?" I nodded, confused. "My name is Eleanor Thompson. I believe I'm your grandmother." The coffee shop seemed to fade around us. I stared at the stranger who somehow felt familiar, searching her features for something I recognized. "I've been looking for you for over 20 years. After your mother, my daughter Sarah, passed away, I tried to find you through the adoption agencies, but the records were sealed." "My birth mother?" The words came out as a whisper. Eleanor pulled out a worn photograph from her purse. A young woman, with my eyes and smile, holding a baby. Sarah Marie Thompson. She was brilliant, just like you. Got into medical school but died in a car accident before she could finish. I took the photo with shaking hands. The resemblance was unmistakable. Not just physical, but something in her expression, a determination I recognized in my own mirror. "She would have been so proud of you," Eleanor said, sitting down without invitation. "I've been following your career, reading every article about your company. When I saw your picture in Tech Weekly last month, I knew I'd found you." Mike watched this reunion with wonder. "Mrs. Thompson, how did you know we'd be here?" Eleanor smiled, an expression that transformed her whole face. "I've been staying at the inn downtown, hoping to work up the courage to contact Jessica. I saw you both walk in." "You've been here for days?" I asked. "A week.
I wanted to approach you at your parents' house, but she hesitated. I saw the kind of people they were, the parties, the expensive cars, the way they treated the household staff. I wasn't sure they'd want someone like me disrupting their world. Someone like her. I looked at Eleanor's simple clothes, her careful manner, the way she clutched her purse like it contained everything she owned. She was nothing like the Hartwells, with their flashy wealth and social climbing. "Tell me about her," I said, "about my mother." Eleanor's face lit up. Sarah was fierce, independent to a fault. She worked 3 jobs to pay for college, refused any help even when I begged her to let me contribute. She said she wanted to earn everything herself, that handouts came with strings attached. The words hit me like a physical blow. My birth mother had understood something I'd spent 28 years learning the hard way. "She sounds like Jessica," Mike said quietly. She was going to be a pediatric surgeon. She wanted to help children who couldn't help themselves. When she found out she was pregnant with you, she could have made different choices, but she said you were already loved, already wanted, even if she couldn't keep you. I wiped my eyes, not caring that I was crying in public. Why couldn't she keep me? She was too young, too poor, and too proud to ask for help. She thought you deserved better than what she could provide. The Hartwells seemed perfect on paper. Wealthy, stable, educated. They were good at seeming perfect, I said bitterly. Eleanor reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was soft, lined with age, but her grip was strong. "You turned up perfect anyway. Eleanor would have been amazed by what you've accomplished." "I don't feel accomplished. I feel like I've been buying love my whole life and getting counterfeit affection in return." "Then stop buying," Eleanor said simply. "Love isn't for sale, sweetheart. Real love is given freely, or it's not love at all." Mike nodded. "She's right, Jess. What you did today, cutting Emma off, standing up to Mom and Dad, that took real courage. It felt like self-preservation. Sometimes through the same thing. Your mother had that same courage. She made hard choices because they were right, not because they were easy." I looked between Mike and Eleanor, these 2 people who'd appeared in my life just when I needed them most. One who'd chosen to stand by me despite shared history with our adoptive family, and one who'd spent decades searching for a granddaughter she'd never met. "I have something for you," Eleanor said, pulling a small wrapped package from her purse. It was Sarah's. "I've been saving it for you." Inside was a simple gold necklace with a small pendant, a tree with deep roots and spreading branches. She bought it for herself when she started medical school. She said it reminded her that growth requires both strong roots and the courage to reach for something better. As I fastened the necklace around my neck, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time in my life, I was connected to people who loved me not for what I could provide, but for who I was. "What happens now?" Mike asked. I touched the pendant, thinking of my birth mother's courage and Eleanor's patient love. Now, I go back to San Francisco and build the life I actually want, with people who choose to be in it. Eleanor smiled. "Can an old woman be part of that life?" "I was hoping you'd ask." Back in San Francisco, I threw myself into dismantling the financial web I'd built around the Hartwells. Marcus met me at my office with boxes of paperwork, his expression both admiring and concerned. "The termination orders are filed," he said, spreading documents across my conference table. "Jessica, are you prepared for the fallout?" "Let me worry about that." I signed each document with decisive strokes. "What about Emma's allowance?" "Terminated, though I should mention her mother's rehab program was legitimately helping her stay clean. Emma wasn't lying about that." I paused, pen hovering over the signature line. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of guilt about cutting off support for someone's recovery.
Then I remembered Emma's calculated manipulation, her willingness to exploit my vulnerabilities for money. "That's not my responsibility," I said, signing the final page. "And the family trust funds. Gone. All of it." I handed the papers back to Marcus. "How long before they realize what's happened?"
Their mortgage payment's due tomorrow. When it bounces, they'll know immediately. As summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzed with a call from Richard. I declined it, then watched as Kate's name appeared on the screen. Then Richard again. Then a number I didn't recognize. "They're panicking," I observed. Can you blame them? Their entire lifestyle just evaporated. Daniel knocked on my office door, balancing coffee and takeout bags. At 30, my boyfriend had the kind of steady presence that had anchored me through countless business crises. But he'd never seen me deal with family drama this nuclear. "How are you holding up?" he asked, setting food on my desk. Better than expected. I realized it was true. The guilt I'd anticipated wasn't there. Instead, I felt lighter, like I had been carrying a weight I hadn't realized was there. "Your phone's been buzzing nonstop." The Hartwells are discovering what happens when the money stops flowing. Daniel sat across from me, his expression thoughtful. "Any regrets? About cutting them off? No. About waiting so long to do it? Absolutely." "What about Emma?" That was harder to answer. Emma made her choice when she decided to manipulate me instead of asking for help. I might have helped her mother's recovery if she'd been honest about needing support. And now? Now she gets to learn what I learned, that real relationships aren't built on financial transactions. My computer chimed with an email notification, then another, then a flood of them. I opened my inbox to find dozens of messages from Connecticut numbers, from Richard's business associates, from Kate's social circle. Word was spreading fast about the Hartwells' sudden financial crisis. "Jesus," Marcus muttered, reading over my shoulder. "They're not even trying to be subtle about asking for money." One email stood out, from Mike's account, but the tone was wrong. "Jessica, I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this has gone too far. Mom collapsed when the bank called about the mortgage. She's in the hospital. Dad's talking about bankruptcy. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Please reconsider. Mike." I called Mike immediately. "Did you send me an email?" "What email? I'm at the hospital with Mom." "Someone's using your account to guilt trip me." "Probably Dad. He's desperate. The bank froze their accounts, the country club called about unpaid fees, and their lawyer wants a retainer they can't afford." "Is Kate really in the hospital?" "Yeah, but it's anxiety, not a heart attack. She'll be fine when she accepts that the free ride is over." I felt a stab of something, not quite guilt, but sadness for the family that could have been if they'd ever learned to value people over money. "Mike, are you okay? Financially, I mean?" "I'm fine. I live on my salary, remember? Novel concept in our family." After I hung up, Daniel studied my face. "Having second thoughts?" "No, but I am thinking about redirecting some of that money towards something worthwhile." By the end of the day, I had established the Sarah Thompson Memorial Scholarship Fund for foster children pursuing higher education. The amount I had been sending to the Hartwells would now help kids like Emma, kids who needed opportunities, not exploitation. "Your birth mother would be proud," Daniel said, reading the fund documents. "I hope so. I'm trying to figure out how to use my resources for good instead of enabling dysfunction." "Speaking of resources," Daniel said carefully, "have you thought about what this means for us, for our future?" I looked at him, this man who'd never asked me for anything except honesty and time together. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've watched you struggle with your family for 2 years, and now that you've cut those ties, I'm wondering if you're ready to build something new, something real." The conversation felt significant, weighted with possibility. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" "I'm saying I love the woman who had the courage to walk away from people who didn't deserve her, and I'd like to build a life with her if she's interested." I touched the pendant Eleanor had given me, feeling the strength of roots and the possibility of growth. For the first time in my adult life, I was free to choose my own family. "I'm very interested," I said.
3 weeks after I cut off their funding, the Hartwell's world collapsed completely. Marcus called me with updates that felt like reading a disaster report from a safe distance. Their foreclosure proceedings started yesterday. They're asking for a 60-day extension, but the bank's not interested. Apparently, Richard tried to claim the payments were guaranteed income. From where? Anonymous donor. He couldn't prove the source, obviously, so the bank treated it as phantom income. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. There's something else, Marcus continued. Emma tried to get back into your building yesterday. Security turned her away, but she left a letter. I don't want to see it. You should. It's not what you'd expect.
My mother relapsed. She's back in the hospital, and I can't afford the treatment program. I'm not asking for money. I know I destroyed that bridge. I'm asking for something else. There's going to be a confrontation. My biological mother, Carmen, is clean again and angry about how the Hartwells used me. She's driving to Connecticut tomorrow to get me back. I thought you should know in case things get ugly. I'm sorry for all of it. You deserved better. Emma. I stared at the letter, then called Mike. Is Emma's mother really coming? I asked. Yeah. Some woman showed up at the house an hour ago screaming at Mom and Dad about exploiting her daughter. It's chaos here. Where are you? Hiding at a friend's place. I can't watch this anymore, Jess. They're blaming everyone but themselves. And Emma. She's here with her mother. They're both crying, both angry. Carmen is demanding to know how much the Hartwells paid Emma to manipulate you. The next call came from a number I didn't recognize. A woman's voice, rough with tears and rage. Is this Jessica Thompson? This is Carmen Rodriguez, Emma's mother? Yes. I need you to know something. My daughter thought she was helping both of us by taking that job with you. The Hartwells told her you were desperate for companionship, that she'd be doing a good deed by being your friend. They told her I was pathetic. They told her you were lonely and generous and that helping you feel valued would be good for everyone. Emma believed she could make it real, that she could actually care about you. But she didn't. Carmen was quiet for a moment. I think she did by the end. When she came to get me from that shelter in Hartford, she was crying about betraying someone who didn't deserve it. She said you were the first person who'd ever seen potential in her. The conversation left me hollow. Emma had been as manipulated as I was, just from a different angle. The Hartwells had used both our vulnerabilities, her desperation for family, my longing for acceptance, to maintain their lifestyle. What happens to her now? I asked. She's coming home with me. We're going back to Hartford, starting over. I've got 6 months clean this time, a job at a grocery store. It's not much, but it's honest. Carmen, the monthly payments that were supporting Emma, I had no idea where they were going. If I'd known about your recovery program, don't. Emma made her choice, and now we live with it. But thank you for stopping the money. She needed to learn that shortcuts have costs. After we hung up, I sat in my office watching the San Francisco skyline, thinking about cycles of manipulation and the courage it took to break them. Emma had been caught between her mother's addiction and the Hartwells' exploitation, making desperate choices that hurt everyone involved. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Jessica, please call. We can work this out. I deleted it without reading the rest. The next message was from Kate. I don't understand why you're being so cruel. We loved you. I deleted that one, too. Then came a call from Mike. It's over. The Hartwells are selling the house, moving to a condo. Dad's looking for work. Mom's having what she calls a nervous breakdown, but what I'd call a reality check. And Emma? Gone. Her mother drove her back to Hartford this morning. They looked actually hopeful, like they were finally free to build something real. I thought about that as I locked up my office and headed home to Daniel. Emma and her mother, starting over with nothing but honesty between them. The Hartwells facing the consequences of their choices. Mike finally free from a family dynamic that had poisoned him too. And me, walking toward a future I chose
instead of one I'd been manipulated into funding. For the first time in my adult life, all my relationships were voluntary. It was terrifying and liberating and absolutely worth the price I'd paid to get here. 6 months later, I stood in my San Francisco kitchen watching Eleanor teach Daniel how to make my birth mother's apple pie recipe. The afternoon light streamed through windows that finally felt like home, warming a table set for 5. Eleanor, Daniel, Mike, who'd moved to the city for an environmental law position, Dr. Sarah Kim, and me. Sarah always said the secret was in the crust, Eleanor said, guiding Daniel's hands as he rolled out dough. Patience and just enough pressure. Too much force ruins everything. I touched the pendant at my throat, thinking about patience and pressure, about the difference between forcing love and allowing it to grow naturally. The Sarah Kim Memorial Scholarship had awarded its first grants last month, 12 foster kids heading to college with full support and no strings attached. Real help, freely given. Any word from Connecticut? Mike asked, arranging flowers he'd brought from the farmer's market. Richard found a job at a small investment firm, entry level. Mom's working retail at Nordstrom. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, only the quiet peace of consequences fairly distributed. They're renting a one-bedroom apartment in Stamford. And Emma?
Carmen sent me a photo last week. Emma's enrolled in nursing school, working nights at a diner to pay tuition. She looks different. Older, but more real somehow. Dr. Kim looked up from the salad she was preparing. How do you feel about that? I hope she finds what she's actually looking for this time. But that's not my responsibility anymore. Daniel smiled at me from across the kitchen, flour dusting his hands and shirt. In 3 hours, he'd be officially my fiancé. We'd planned a small engagement announcement for tonight with the only family that mattered. You know what I realized? I said to the room. I spent years trying to buy a seat at a table where I was never meant to sit. The real tragedy wasn't that they didn't love me, it's that I almost forgot I was worthy of love at all. Eleanor wiped her hands on her apron and pulled me into a hug that smelled like vanilla and acceptance. Your mother knew you were worthy from the moment you existed. She just couldn't give you what you deserved herself. But she made sure I'd find it eventually. Through us, Mike said, raising his coffee cup in a mock toast, the family of choice. As we sat down to dinner, passing dishes and sharing stories that weren't performed or calculated, I marveled at how different love felt when it was freely given. No price tags, no hidden agendas, no fear that it would disappear if I stopped paying for it. To new beginnings, Daniel said, raising his wine glass. To the courage to choose your own family, Mike added. To love that doesn't require a purchase order, Dr. Kim contributed with a smile. To second chances and starting over, Eleanor finished. I looked around the table at these people who'd chosen to be here, who'd supported me through the hardest decision of my adult life, who loved me not for what I could provide, but for who I was becoming. To family, I said simply, the kind that actually matters. Later, after Daniel's proposal and Eleanor's happy tears and Mike's terrible jokes, I stepped onto my balcony overlooking the bay. The city lights sparkled below, each one representing someone's life, someone's choices, someone's chance to start over. My phone sat silent on the counter inside. No desperate calls from Connecticut, no manipulation disguised as family obligation, no one demanding payment for love that was never real in the first place. Instead, there were text messages from my chosen family. Eleanor sharing recipes, Mike sending photos from his new job, Dr. Kim checking in with genuine care, Daniel planning our future with quiet excitement. This was what I'd been buying all those years, this feeling of belonging, of being valued, of having people who showed up because they wanted to, not because they were paid to. The difference was I'd finally learned the price was never money. It was courage. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss
any upload from us.